Alright, so this is Ordinary Madness, episode 47. I'm Steve Barker, and with me today is Emmett Montgomery, Seattle comedian and curator of all sorts of cool things. And most recently I found out, so you're the program advisor for the Bumbershoot comedy stage?
I think, yeah, but the local comedy stage. So the Northwest comedy program advisor, I think was the term we came up with. So I didn't book anything. I just suggested a whole bunch of producers.
Yeah.
And they kind of had their decisions on where they want to go. Essentially, they wanted a much wider net than has been going on the last couple. Well, and really since the local comedy stage kind of started. Instead of having like only one or two production entities, have like each show be different and then covering a larger range. Right now we have acts coming down from Vancouver, and then as far south as LA, really, with Brian Cook, who developed here as a comedian and writer. He's bringing his erotic fan fiction show, which started here, which is now a podcast for Nerdist, and erotic fan fiction is exactly what it sounds like, which is comedians writing erotic fan fiction. And
so like TV shows type of thing?
Anything. It could range from like, current events to TV shows, cartoon characters.
So are they usually things that aren't necessarily categorized as erotic?
Yeah, it's Adam. One I saw that was amazing was Adam Clayton Holland, who's a great comedian out of Denver. Did Friday Night Lights, which was just this, locker room ushering into manhood.
Oh,
so you
nice.
can imagine.
That sounds pretty hilarious. So when you were picking these guys, what were some of the criteria you were looking for on who you wanted?
Well, there is, I think, in general, just with Seattle, in the Pacific Northwest, there's so much great stuff going on, but people tend to stick kind of in their own caves. I think we're sort of a cave culture, where we sort of have, like, let's gather all our favorite things around. We find a cave, put that fire on, start telling the stories, and then wait for winter to end. But the thing about the Pacific Northwest is, like, winter never ends. Like,
right.
Even though we kind of have that mentality, and it's very easy to think, well, this these things I found, this is the world, and when it's actually a lot bigger. I mean, there's so many great pockets of stuff, and so the goal was to really kind of showcase that. So it was sort of, a lot of it is like who hasn't done it, or who has something different than anything else to bring, and or who just trying to just based on merit, and also give people. My goal was, if people went and all they saw was the local comedy programming, that they get a pretty great cross section, and to have a lot. So not just stand up, but some different things as well. But there's so many different scenes, and there's so many different generations, and right now we have not only a big geographical, just pretty much going up the whole West Coast, but also the youngest performer is 19, and the oldest one being 73. Wow. So you're looking at 1,000 miles and over half a century. Yeah. And I think that's pretty great.
Totally.
So,
well, that almost seems kind of like what you're doing with Weird and Awesome, where it's comedy, but you've got some writers, you've got poets, musicians, and speaking with the pockets, it seems like there's poets over here, and they do these events, and there's stand-up comedians, they do these events, but Weird and Awesome kind of seems like you're like, how do you choose the people? Are you just like, I think they're good and invite them?
Yeah, I've been really trying to do it just specifically on what do I think they will do as a creator. I almost said performer, but, I'll have people that don't necessarily perform, and it's sort of that fear that it works, but, so creators, like, I had Scott Larimore, who is currently the deputy director of curation at the Fry Art Museum, where I'm a security guard a couple days a week. And, before that, he had the Larimore Project, which was just, I think, a very important gallery that had some really ambitious and wonderful installations, and who I think Scott did a lot for the art scene. But how do you have him perform that? Right. And so I was just thinking, and we'd been having conversations, and so I was like, hey, here's the and he came to the show, and I gave him I wanted him to do fart history, because he has a heart history, and instead we came up with a plan B. Hopefully I'll be able to get him to do fart history. But I said, well, this is your assignment. And so every show I have, the first half, people doing things out of their comfort zones. And there's an assigned sharing and a song and story segment. And so for sharing, I was like, well, there is, a meteor heading to Seattle. It's going to destroy it within 100-mile radius, and make it so that there will be no, like, the people won't be able to come for 100 years. But you happen to have meteorite-proof material.
Okay.
But because of whatever's going on in the particulate matter, you can't fly anywhere. But there's no way you're going to survive. But you have 24 hours to assemble a time capsule. What would it be?
Oh, okay.
And I think it was a great idea.
Yeah.
And it would have been amazing to see what he did. But instead, what he did is he did a PowerPoint presentation on the history of time capsules as art.
Oh, wow.
And it was pretty fantastic. And he was sweating the whole time and nervous, and it was really neat. And I think that's I think one of the great things about having a good room to fail in, because he had seen other people take risks and do that, and then also hopefully he got something from that, kind of pushing boundaries and stuff like that. So that's sort of my attitude with the show as far as where the diversity comes from. I mean, I've just enjoyed Seattle, and I guess you keep an open heart and sort of see something, and then be like, oh, okay, well, let's see what that happens. It's like when you're a little kid and you're like, well, what would happen if Superman were to fight the Incredible Hulk,
Right.
But for me, it's like, well, what would happen if this comic book artist I really like came in and sang a song?
Yeah.
It's the same.
Well, and so going back to a good room to fail, do you think failure is kind of an important part of art or of creating?
I think it's taking those risks, and it's also, the second half of Weird and Awesome, we have people doing what they're good at, but sometimes people, so I always end up with a professional comedian, and it's really wonderful to see something tight and well rehearsed, and something that's definitely much more than worth much more than I'm paying them, and how much effort. But just to have that. But the journey, I think, is really cool too. And I think when you see something happen for the first time, that's one of the joys of improv comedy, because it's some of those jokes just blow you away, because it's the first time maybe that phrase has ever been said, ever, or this. You see new ideas being born. You get, like, everybody who's in the room when a baby is born, you all become kind of blood brothers, right? That's sort of what can happen in that. And then also be like, it's okay. Like, this is a safe place. I know that there's been some performers who, after their set, have been like, I wish I would have been more risky and not just been so safe. So
Yeah. And then so there's going to be at least one. Is there more than one Weird and Awesome that's going to be at Bumbershoot?
there's going to be one at Bumbershoot, and that's through the TPS program, which I applied for, the Theater Puget Sound, which is a great. People can apply in January, and it's a juried process, and then they come up with this really great theater program, and I think it will be good. It will be very exciting to be working with Rex Carlton, who is kind of the tech guy of all tech guys, who's been doing it for 35 years, and have a just much bigger theater. But I'm also bringing my tech team, which is Alex King from Annex, and I think, it's trying to put together and honor the space, but still honor the show,
right.
and it will be good. I'm really excited about some of the prizes that I'm putting, because prize giving is a big part,
right? Yeah.
And so I'm trying to do something really special with the prizes, and then kind of showcase what it is, and then we'll see. And then we'll have, normally that weekend we would have had have a Weird and Awesome on the 1st, but instead we're having it on the 8th, a week later at Annex. But I mean, this Sunday we had, I think, either our second or third sellout, but it was in August,
Wow.
which traditionally has been 15, 20 people show up, and it was insane because it was so hot, and just everybody just feeding off the crowd. Everyone went over on their time, but I've talked to a lot of people, and I think I'm the only one that's bothered by that. I think because it being so hot and so much, it was almost like a sweat lodge, like some sort of, just a smoky temple almost, because we were all sort of breathing each other, because when you, when you can taste the air, there's something going on.
Right, yeah.
But it's, when I think about the first Weird and Awesome, had 7 paid audience members, and I knew every one of their names.
And that was probably, was that 3 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago? Yeah, December of 2010.
Wow, so this is a long time. And I know in Seattle, a lot of things like this pop up, but, they do it for a year, they do it for a few months, and they kind of just go away.
It's easy to think that, but if you look at, Spin the Bottle, which is this amazing late night cabaret that's first Fridays at Annex, a big inspiration.
I think I saw you perform at it a few years ago.
16 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's there is some, I have been part of things that have always been the fresh new thing, right?
Yeah.
But it's usually been going on for a couple of years.
Right. Yeah,
and I'm sure as you.
I guess it's easy to think that way.
I mean, how long did Cheap Wine and Poetry? What's the lifespan?
We just finished the eighth year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but for me, I did that, and but was that like 2.5 years ago?
Yeah.
I had been hearing about it for years, so it was a new thing, and and as it kind of ebbs and flows. I mean, I still have people sometimes who are like, "Hey, are you still doing jokes?" And because that's sort of what I do, kind of bristle. But then you're like, well, I've been outside of their universe,
Right.
But it's like, don't you? My name is everywhere. But it's like you have to open the book first, sort of thing.
Well, and then just speaking of that, because you're doing all this other stuff, how much time do you get to just really focus on you as a stand-up and your own just personal material that's, your work?
Well, I run an open mic with at CC's called Beard Practice every Tuesday. And that has been really fun anthropologically, because you have these two subcultures, the bears, the big burly gay guys, and these stand-up comics, which are mostly 20-something straight white guys.
Yeah.
Although there has been a lot of there's been an influx of really talented female comics, and it just to see them kind of interact, because you have so many different belief systems and sexual preferences and age and body types, and you put them all in a room, and I get yeah, so I try to do new stuff, but because I partner with the Punchline comedy guys that do stuff at Jai Tai, and so they're always really good at giving me stage time whenever I need it, and giving me long open mic sets. But I also have a job at the Fry as an art guard, which sometimes you're in an empty art gallery. And so there's a lot of writing, a lot of daydreaming, and people watching. But as far as I used to, back with People's Republic of Comedy, I mean, there was a lot more practical, like worrying about sponsorships and setting up chairs and setting up meetings and stuff. And I do very little of that. I mean, I do a fair amount, but I also am married to a wonderful woman who is the managing director of Sketchfest, and she,
I didn't know that.
Kate is great at helping me with my calendar and doing some follow through and really a support system that I didn't have. So I could get a fair amount of time to focus on stuff. And if you look at the other stuff I'm doing, Weird and Awesome, curating that show gives me a lot of respect, perspective on what sort of artist I am and where I'm going. But I also, one of the last things I do after I have the lineup is I open the show with a performance myself. So I have to make the decision. I usually have like a high-tech thing, with sound cues and props and maybe other people, and a low-tech thing. It's a story and talking. That may be something that's like lighthearted and goofy, and something that's like nightmares, because that's sort of, nightmares are a big part of my lifestyle. Then you decide, though, then you look at the flavor of the show, make a decision on what am I going to do. And I try to do something contrasting, or something that's maybe just the lacking flavor, because I never want themes with Weird and Awesome with Emmett Montgomery, but they always happen.
Right.
Which is kind of nice. Maybe that's just how our brains work, that we have to align things, or it's just really nice and serendipitous. Our July show, which I consider a really landmark, was I had invited several people to do so. There's this young comic, Tyler Schnapp, who is this kind of, he's like a 40-year-old in a 22-year-old's body. He lives in a house with 8 other punk rock kids, and he is a fry cook at a heavy metal bar, and just he kind of has a really just high, just a gravelly voice, and he's just really unique, kind of dark comic. So I asked him to do his happiest moment as sharing, throw him for a loop, and I thought it was, who knows what it would have been. And then my new assistant producer and alternating co-host every other month, Jana will host with me and do some great stuff. But she's an improv actress, so she makes decisions that are usually really fun and lighthearted. And I was like, I've been teasing her, I want to do, Sad Jana. Yeah. And she was like, it was her birthday was coming up. She wanted to do something goofy. I'm like, fine. I'm like, this is great. So we're going to have sort of fun touches and elements. And we had a father-son singing a song for Song and Story. It's Tim Thomas, who's also Anita Goodman, the drag queen, and then his son Benjamin, who's a regular audience member. And so it was going to be just a sort of lighthearted show. And we started out with a piñata of me that was full of candy and spiders, Grandpa Candy and Spiders, to promote this event, the Piñata Bash that happened at Rebar. And it was just going to be this perfect sort of thing. And like, okay, so what I decided to do was I recently have started remembering when my mother took me to an unlicensed hypnotherapist to regress me to the womb, because apparently when my mother was in Russia with my father, who's a linguist, she was pregnant with me, and she got some fever, and it affected me as a fetus, and that's why I was like acting out, and we had communication problems.
How old were you?
I was like 8 or 9. I just barely started remembering it. My mom, who has some memory issues herself, is not really something. But so Alex King and I were like, okay, let's reenact this. So I'm out there, I'm talking, I'm telling the story, and there's a chair in the middle of the stage, and I sit down, and then it goes red, and it just, the heartbeat starts, and we go through, and then, I can't breathe, and then it stops, and, but it's kind of like, wow, that's like, oh, it's okay, Jana's going to come out and do something goofy. But an hour or two before, Jana was like, oh, you're going to get sad Jana. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know what sad Jana is.
Right.
Her, the guy she's been dating has a job out of state, and he's leaving. And she wrote a song to convey her heartbreak to him. It was a really human, wonderful moment.
Wow.
And so then that's piled on. And then Tyler Schnupp comes out with his happiest moment. And does one of the rawest, most beautiful things when talking about kind of overcoming and standing up to his abusive stepdad. Like his happiest moment was found at the bottom of a pool after he'd gotten beaten up and thrown in there, where he got the strength to defend himself with his words. But it was like super hot, as it has been all summer, and the room got cold because everyone stopped breathing, sort of thing. And then all of a sudden we're in this dark emotional ride, not a bad one, but just a super intense thing.
Right.
And I was just thinking, like, man, if Benjamin and Thomas comes out, and Benjamin has written a song about like some dead cat, or like, we're in trouble. But instead it was about a dream he had, and they had like matching bell bottoms, and Benjamin had one long maraca and one tiny one, and they were just, and he just was a horrible rhythm section, and it got us out of there. But like people are hugging each other, and it's, so you never know.
Yeah. When you were first thinking of the idea of Weird and Awesome, is this kind of how you were expecting or hoping a night would go, of just all sorts of different emotions? Or
well, I don't think it's really a comedy show. But the initial, it's a variety show, and it shows, but there are sometimes, it just has to be good. It doesn't have to be funny. Or I didn't even say good. I say interesting. When people are asking for prompts on what to do, like they'll, if it's going to be boring, then maybe. But if you have something to say or show, and try, or if you want to try it, then there's the room next door. There's some wonderful people who serve you booze to make it work.
It's been a while since I've gone, just because Sunday nights are hard since I got to go to work the next day. But a very, very interesting moment. I can't remember the girl's name, but she told a story about her having an abortion, which one is a super personal thing. She's telling to 30 strangers.
That would have been Alicia Sanchez.
Yeah, but she also made it funny, and it was like, my emotions were going up and down, because it's like, oh shit, this is the sad part. But then she would make me laugh, and just like that's how I really enjoy storytelling.
The funny thing about that is she initially was going, and that's the one that Brian McGuigan was on.
Right, yeah.
And he did a piece from Fat Fuck. And she had seen it before. We were actually at Spin the Bottle together, and we saw that, and she was like, oh, this is so good, Yeah. And then she found out she was on the bill with him, and she was a little intimidated. But she that day, she's like, hey, so I was going to tell a story about when my parents sent me to fat camp as a kid, but I thought it was just a really terrible 4-H camp. And I was like, wow. And it's sort of funny. Yeah, it's really fun stuff. But my parents are coming, and I don't want to embarrass them. So, can I talk about my abortion?
Wow.
It's a really sweet story. And it kind of is, because it's sort of, she's married to that guy now. And
oh, I didn't know. Oh, man. Did that come after?
Yeah, it came after.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Wow, that's
yeah.
really
I
cool
actually
to know.
officiated their wedding last year.
Oh wow!
So
she should tell that story again now with even more happy ending.
But it's that sort of, but I feel that there's a little bit of pinky swear when people come in, like, yeah, you've made a decision. You climb those stairs. You pay your money. It's a Sunday evening. You're not friends yet, but you choose what your sacrament is, whether it be Diet Coke or water cooler water or whiskey. And then you get there and you experience. But initially it was going to be just a cross section of the various types of comedy going on. So video, sketch, character, improv, stand up. But that didn't happen, and I'm glad it didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be great to see a show like that, and I think a show like that would be wonderful. There's so much to drive from Seattle, but instead it kind of turned into this animal. I mean, when Annex asked for me to fill up 3 Sundays in December, I didn't even know what show. I said, just call it Weird and Awesome with Emmett Montgomery.
Yeah.
And that's what it turned into.
Nice. Well, it's a great show. Everybody should check it out. And it's always the last Sunday of the month.
It's the first Sunday of the month.
First Sunday.
Except this September it'll be the second Sunday because of most of the regular crew is all involved in Bumbershoot this year.
Right. And then, so how often do you get to just perform stand-up on your own? Because you do that a few times a week, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the main thing I do. It depends. I mean, I'm always at CC's, every Tuesday. And then, there's some busy times. So I was just at Bremerton. In Bremerton, I headlined a show that had a beard theme. And I was able to suggest 2 great comics, Mike Coletta and Yogi Poliwal. And we had a great midnight ferry ride back that was super fun. And that's nice because it was a nice little chunk to, buy shoes with or whatever. Right. It depends. Sometimes I'm doing a lot of stand-up. If I'm featuring for somebody or just have a lot of one-offs. And then other times it's all like puppet shows and storytelling. Right. Summer is usually a bit lighter, but it's been a really busy summer for me. And then this month I'm going to be at the Shits and Giggles Festival the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th in Humboldt County. And that will be my first time as one of the paid headliners. I've done a lot of comedy festivals, but they've actually given me a bit of a stipend and a hotel room, and that should be nice.
Nice. Well, and so when you're a headline, how much time are you doing up there?
Oh, well, for festival, that's usually about half hour. But in a club, it's an hour, 45 minutes to an hour.
Wow.
Which is sort of, it's still a little scary. I mean, it's a workout.
How long did it take you to
I've been doing stand up for 8 years.
And about what time did you feel like you had an hour worth of stuff?
This year.
Wow.
But I've had a good 35 for a couple of years. But then it also changes, as you write jokes. It's not about having an hour of good jokes. It's having an hour of good jokes that work together. Right. Because you introduce a premise or, you create, as you're building this universe and you say something is this way, then it really has to be that way unless you have a clever way to unbreak that rule. And so, I try to limit myself to 2 poop jokes a set. Right. So, man, if I didn't have that rule, then I got 2 hours, 3 hours. I mean, I went through a brown period, but I mean, if you look at it, it's one of the most universal experiences, not only of the human condition, but just as animals in general. Like everything poops. There's a process. Plants do. Like there's just processing nourishment and eliminating it and turning. There's a lot to say about it. So don't judge me.
No. Well, I think it was probably about a year and a half ago. I saw you do about half an hour at Jai Tai And I think there were a bunch of your friends who all opened. I thought that was a really funny night. And I think that was one of the longer sets. Or I think you just went up there with your, like a composition book and was just like, I'm going to do everything in this book, or...
Maybe.
Is it something along those lines?
I usually don't bring notes on stage, but I think, especially at Jai Tai has been so great as to workshop there. It's like, you're like, oh man, I don't want to tell. You kind of feel... It feels weird, especially a place that has a built-in audience, regulars, that like you don't want to tell something that will let jokes. Like I don't want the echo of the joke I told last. It's just don't want the jokes to hit each other. So you want to try new stuff and do some different things. So, there was one time I did a half hour at Jai Tai where I had an ear infection, and so I could only barely hear out of one ear. So I don't know if you saw that stage. I did bring notes because I was like somewhere else.
Yeah, that's got to be tough. So have you go up when you have to, like go up there and when you're sick or anything like that, or will you just fight through that?
A lot of times like you'll be sick or you'll be having a terrible day. At least for me, and something it'll be just. But you go in, you hit that stage, and it's just like that's like the safe place, and it's just you can do it.
Yeah.
All that nervousness and fear and rage kind of changes when you're on stage, when you're in this sort of joke telling mode.
Well, with your attitude and your personality type, I don't imagine you have too many bad days. I imagine the world of Emmett Montgomery is just rainbows and laughter.
That's the trick, I guess, to really show, because it's not that way at all.
Oh no, you've duped me.
Yeah, which I mean that's wonderful. I guess that you. No, not. I mean, I have a lot of nightmares. They're a big part, and I enjoy a lot of them. But no, there's definitely. I really have kind of tried. Like, if you look at it as just what character or whatever attitude of having like a guy, like who's sort of a hope-filled dreamer in a hopeless universe, that sort of, or like, just, but yeah, it's, for me, the creating is a way to take all that, those dark, depressing, the sort of, the monsters and make them palatable. And I think, though, that's what sort of performance is. If you kind of look at like what the like shamanism, sort of like, what is a shaman? He's a guy that takes monsters in and sort of bridges this other scary world, right? And and makes that palatable, like at least acceptable. So then we can endure it, makes it endurable, And that was, and a lot of that would be around a circle or in front of people, a shared community experience. I think that's honestly what storytellers and stand-up comics, and poets and puppeteers and artists are doing is a lot of time. It's it's us bridging that sort of unknown world, and I'm talking in very secular fashion, not saying that there's something supernatural,
right?
But the world is a big place, so whatever. But but I think it is taking that sort of shit and turning it into gold, right?
yeah, totally. Well, and then just along the lines of storytelling, what's your involvement with the Bushwick Book Club?
I am one of their semi-regulars. There's a few of us that aren't necessarily musicians, like Evan J. Peterson is another guy.
Yeah.
And I have hosted their events and been able to do things. Actually, as a performer, then I will be on the Wizard of Oz show, and we're gonna figure out that there's some very cool things. I think Jeff Larson is just a genius, and has similar who's the creative director, managing director. He's, main dreamer of Bushwick, and I mean, I think he and I have similar curatorial goals, and so it's really nice to have had that kinship. So I am a member of the Bushwick Book Club, so that's your answer. So,
well, had they seen you perform and thought, hey, this guy...
Mike Vodova, who is heavily involved and is part of... We wrote the book on Connectors, who actually I just enjoy immensely. He felt that having someone else host and taking off the pressure from Jeff would be a good idea. And so Jeff and I got together and we totally vibed, and I did the 1984 show, and we've had a great relationship since. Not only has it's allowed me to bring members of the Bushwick Book Club to Weird and Awesome, like Aaron J. Shea. We'll be having Mo Preventure, and Emily Zoe, Amy Zoe on our Weird and Awesome show at Bumbershoot.
Oh, cool.
And, we give away tickets to Bushwick events and buttons and albums and T-shirts at Weird and Awesome. So there's a really good relationship. So yeah, I'm part of that, I guess.
Nice.
So.
Is the Bumbershoot Weird and Awesome? Is your lineup already set? Is it public knowledge yet? Or
it's going to be a little fluid. But Travis and Kevin. Travis Vogt and Kevin Clark, who always perform my show, they're working on some great stuff. Jana Hutchinson will be co-hosting with me, and then we will. There's a few other things that are hopefully surprises, and then the really wonderful Jennifer Jasper.
Nice, yeah.
So we all shared a bill because you wore the unicorn costume for me.
Right, yeah. What was the unicorn's name again?
Moondancer.
Moondancer, and yeah, I should tell you about that night just because. Well, because the one thing I remember from the description of Moondancer is he's kind of a jerk, right?
Yes.
So,
but sort of this kind of Dionysian.
Because I don't know what happened to me that night. Maybe it was because I had a couple shots of whiskey, but after that event, I went over to Nemo's, watched Katie K perform. Sometime when I was at that show, I turned into a jerk, and my girlfriend and I have almost never had any fights. Clearly, all my fault. I don't know. I don't even.
This
remember
is after you wore my unicorn costume.
Yeah, this was after I was Moondancer, and I think it inhabited my body somehow. Because I've never been a jerk to her, and
Well, see, you just
something
need to,
happened that
the
night.
only way to escape the power of the unicorn costume is to get too fat for it, like I have. You have to.
Has he made any appearances?
No, although I recently did a storytelling show in Portland, and it was a Russian roulette format of the show. So you spun a premise wheel, and I got Animal Mayhem.
Oh, wow.
And so I talked about my relationship with Moondancer. And it's weird who gets attracted to that sort of story when you're like, oh yeah, I used to do stand-up comedy as an angry drunk unicorn.
Yeah. Is there any videos of him on the web or anything?
There is some. If you Google, it's.
So I don't think it's time for him to retire yet.
He is. Yeah, I mean, he comes back sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's. I still have the suit. Yeah. But who knows? There may be a Moondancer 2.0.
That's nice. Well, and then just another thing I saw that you did at the Bainbridge Comedy Fest is you're a puppeteer as well as a puppet creator. And I saw that you had this giant one. Was it Mr. Beast?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And I still have all the footage and stuff. That was at Bridgetown, where I just brought this puppet down and took photos of people, and it's just my paper bag puppet and 6 of those. One of the exciting things about puppets that's going on with me, because I've been making these puppets for years, but I haven't really been performing with them. And there's a great collective, the Fussy Cloud Puppet Collective, and they do these puppet slams where people do new pieces or showcase old ones, and there's a theme, and they do it every couple months. And I hosted one, and I did it as a puppet me, with my hands were puppet hands, and it was really wonderful. And they have since asked me to host the next one, and then we'll see what our relationship is. But it seems like this could be a continued involvement. And this year, every other show, we've had puppets involved too. So there's been a lot of puppets at Weird and Awesome, which, I've had Kyle Loven and Scott Augustin, who's Sergeant Rigsby, and we just had Gavin Cummins for his last puppet show in Seattle before he went to the East Coast to pursue his master's in puppetry, and it's been a really, really interesting to work with it. But it's just another way of storytelling, right?
Right, yeah. And then just as far as seems storytelling is a big part of your personality, do you ever sit down and just write an actual short story to perform later, or is you more improv or off the top of your head?
Hey, there's a lot. For me, I do a lot of my writing will be in the shower or lying down, or I take these long walks. But a lot of it for me is finding the right words, and what order they go into, and how to tell that story. And so if you're going to orally perform something, it's a little different than seeing it visually. One of the things I'm working on right now is my friend Tom Mormon just started a culture website called Wonder and Risk. And Tom is a great poet and a really just adventurous, just sweet guy. And he's for a month almost, he's had this site, or the culture magazine he was working for went out of business. So he's like, well, I can either find a new one or I can start something myself.
Yeah.
And there's they have a poetry section. They're going to have a sports and poetry section with all the alt sports going on, like the wrestling and the pencil fighting and all the interesting.
Pencil fighting? What's pencil fighting?
Is
it exactly what it sounds like?
It's that playground game of pencil fighting.
Oh.
But the participants are people with professional wrestling style personas.
Oh.
But it is a game of chance. So
that sounds interesting.
Currently, the winner, the champion, is the yellow dragon, who's a ninja. Nice. Portrayed by my friend Brandy Reddick. Before that, it was the San Juan Island Savage, who had a grass skirt, but also socks and sandals.
Seems totally reasonable.
And then Betsy Threatsy, which was a evil ghost lady, portrayed by classical dancer Patty Hinkle. So it's just weird stuff. It's great. But Tom and I have talked a lot about this project, and it's totally worth checking out. WonderandRisk.com. It's the calendar is really intentionally curated, and he's using a lot of intelligent people to create original content. Travis Vogt, the sketch comedian filmmaker who does my show every month, contributes a lot to it. And right now there's a Sunday comics section. It's Critter Corner is the only thing. It's him doing it with an artist with just fun animal effects.
Yeah.
That probably aren't facts, but
yeah.
But I'm working on a serialized story for him about a young boy who wakes up with a beard that talks, and
nice.
They fight cosmic evil together.
Has this started yet, or is this something?
It's something I'm working on, but it hasn't premiered. I want to get like 3 to 6 of these serials together, and they'll be released either by every other week or weekly.
Oh, I look forward to that. That sounds awesome.
And so, and then I've when I write, like I sit down and I'm going to tell a story, right? the stories I tell are about me, but the writing, like I do write short stories that are kind of fictional or essays and stuff. But that has been a little harder to share. So the goal is to kind of do some more of that. So. Cool. Unfortunately, I'm connected to a lot of platforms that allow me to do this. So,
well, if you ever some of those essays, maybe we can show those at Cheap Beer and Prose one day.
That'd be great. I'm working on one about Frankenstein right now.
Oh, sweet, cool. Well, that's probably a good spot to end. But so just to refresh everybody's memory. So you're going to be at Bumbershoot. Do you know which day the Weird and Awesome is?
Yes. It will be the 7 o'clock show at the TPS stage on Saturday, and then you can also find me at I think the 6 o'clock show at on Sunday at the local comedy stage for erotic fan fiction.
Oh, right on.
And so I got to figure out what I want to write about.
Yeah, you got so many options. Do you have any thoughts yet, or is
I have a few, but I kind of want it to be a surprise.
Right, I understand.
I've already grossed out my wife a bit.
Yeah, and I should congratulate you guys on 4 years of marriage.
Yeah, it's been pretty excited, and the best way I have a functional calendar at emmettmontgomery.com. And then, my Twitter's Emmett Montgomery. My website hasn't been updated for a while, but you can still see some of these projects we were talking about, and there is content I'm sitting on that hopefully will be there soon. And it's very, very easy to find me. I'm doing dozens of things a month.
Well, then so just every Tuesday, you start at CC and then do you go to Jai Tai?
Sometimes I'll go, or sometimes I'll go to another show.
Or is Jai Tai, is that a separate? Because there's an open mic there too, right?
There is.
Is that how it works?
From 9 o'clock. My you sign up at 6:30. You go. My show's from 7 to 8:30. We have a joke of the week. We just had. The last one was classy poop jokes. Before that, we had a very special impressions show, which was super fun. I'd actually picked a few people and give them advance notice to have them prepare impressions. And it's impressions with air quotes, impression. Because everyone kind of did things their own way. So yeah, it's a good time. There's free nachos. There's stiff drinks. It's what it is. If a gay bar is not your thing, I wouldn't go. If that's gonna ruin your night, then it's probably not the place. But then why are you in a comedy show?
Yeah, or why are you in Capitol Hill?
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions.
I went to it when you guys were still doing it at the Crescent. I went and had an interesting time because there was a very wide range of people who look like they've been doing this for a couple of years, and some people look like they might have
that's
just
the same way.
started out.
And Crescent had some great stuff. Crescent was getting just too antagonistic. And it became too much of a battle zone, which some people thrived on and others didn't. And, it's a lot of... One of the things I'm trying to learn is when it's good to kind of leave friends. So we moved it to CC's, which kind of a bigger space and changed the format a bit. And it's been
at the Crescent, I felt like I got heckled by the comedian, and I would never heckle anybody. Well, and then he started getting mad at me because I wasn't laughing, and I was just like, "I'm sorry, man, I just don't find you funny." And I was just like, I didn't say anything, and I was just like,
there was definitely a weird vibe there. It's there were some great moments at the Crescent, and it's not something I would give up, but it's not something I would return to either.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot. This was a lot of fun. Check them out at Bumbershoot and then Annex Theater.